Common planning meetings here at the Silvia School are held twice a week. One is focused on reading instruction, and the other is focused on math instruction.
So the longer school day has supported teacher collaboration. Besides the fact that our teachers get 2 common planning sessions weekly, which we didn't have before, they also have the opportunity to have professional development 1 time a week with their colleagues as well. There's a lot of time embedded for teacher collaboration. A typical common planning meeting would be structured based on whatever next steps were put in place the meeting before. So teachers are going to come with whatever materials that they need for the next steps they've already planned. So typically the meeting starts, we'll have a facilitator. Sometimes those roles are chosen a week prior, or they're chosen right there in the moment. Facilitator, timekeeper, taskmaster, and a recorder. The facilitator will run the conversation, and the taskmaster's job is to kind of get a consensus on the team.
Okay, so we said that we wanted to talk about our professional practice and our student learning goals.
So sometimes meetings are strictly dedicated to data and teachers looking at data and grouping students. Sometimes it's looking to the week ahead on the curriculum map and what they're going to do as a team to make that kind of cohesive. Other times it's bringing student work.
I have a mess here because I've been trying to reword it also.
So the overall goal of the first grade meeting was to first revisit their professional practice goal and their student learning goals, which are both team goals for those teachers.
At this point, 76% of my class have met 33 words or more. But there's those, 5 kids that look like they're staying stagnant. So I'm just curious if we could go around and kind of share some ideas on what you're doing for those kids that are staying stagnant.
I've actually paired them with the ones that have already completed their goal.
Using data has become such a norm for everyone that it's just part of what we do. Teachers use data around formative data. They're working weekly on a story. They're looking at how students are responding to that. They're using district benchmarks. We're using MCAS. We're using multiple pieces of data.
I looked over my data for the ultimate field trip, and overall my students did pretty well. But I found out that about 3 of them, 3 out of 12, got number 1 wrong, which was the author's purpose.
I had 11 children get that problem wrong. Overall, they did well on the other questions. They found that to be the toughest question.
Okay, Chris, did you have your other Christine or?
I did. It was actually the weakest point in my room as well. I only had 54% of my children get that question right.
So if we can spend the next 2 minutes maybe generating some ideas around author's purpose and main idea.
Our common planning meetings are very focused on letting the data drive our teaching. We bring benchmark tests, we bring classroom work, and we look at that data and say, what are areas that we need to come up with some sort of strategies on how to help the students if it's a specific standard that they're struggling with.
The next goal was to kind of look at curriculum and what they were teaching in their classroom, and they could bounce ideas off of each other, what's working and maybe what's not working, along with giving ideas to teachers who haven't done certain sections of the curriculum yet.
We're going to move along to our friend, Mr. George Baker.
I find the same thing. They did all right as we were talking and up at the teacher. They were able to answer, and they were able to give evidence. And then going back to their seat, they're still struggling with writing on the T-chart.
I did not have them do their individual T-charts. They went and did it as a group so that they could talk about it, and work together cooperatively. And from first look, it looked like they were on task and they all got their answers down. Their answers were pretty consistent. So I thought it went pretty well.
I haven't done the T-chart yet, but based on what I've heard you say, is there anything that you found that you had to preview with the kids first, or what you said helped? Because you said yours went well, but theirs, they had trouble with it.
For them, it's always really important to look ahead at that's coming so they can make sure that they come up with a common open response question that they can each answer with their own classrooms.
We want to make sure that the questions that we generate have a lot of evidence that can be pulled from the text.
One of the questions I have here for discussion is about author's purpose, and I was trying to tweak a question to make it good enough to be an open response, but I was thinking about how the author feels about the Amazon.
Well, what I like about the author's purpose question is that we can also tie back the text and print features, and I know in my class that was a bit of an area that we needed to work on. So it gives us an opportunity to go back, recheck that, and kind of go over those features that they can incorporate.
I think that if we did the author's purpose question as an open response question without a little bit more explicit instruction in it, I think they're going to struggle a little bit.
Then the work after that, the goal was to complete this T-chart. So teachers could walk away with a good idea of what they would expect their students to be able to produce. And so that way, when they come to Common Planning next week, they can have some of that student work, and we can compare how did students meet the goal of getting all the pieces in their open response that we had included on the T-chart.
Common planning definitely ensures that we're aligned. The conversation among colleagues allows us to hear everybody's ideas and opinions on things, everybody's take on things. So you're not just going into your classroom every day with how you think or feel about something or your idea of the way something should look or a lesson should go, but it allows us to hear everyone's ideas and certainly affects the way you are then going to go about that lesson. Here is my question for you. Explain the relationship between George and Harry. What might be some of those?
The last step is to complete a ticket to leave, which is basically just a 2-part question. How effective do you think today's meeting was and why? Once a month or so, teacher teams come together and they read those comments. And they give themselves an overall rating on how they think their team meetings are going. If teams feel like their team meetings are not going well, that information actually goes to our instructional leadership team, who then tries to brainstorm ideas on how that team can work better.
The keys needed to make a meeting successful, our teachers need to come into that meeting prepared. So at the end of each common planning meeting, we always set next steps so that when we walk into that meeting, we know what we're working on, we bring the tools or the materials needed so that we are using our time as productively as possible. I think one of the most important things from administrators is an environment of collaboration. I think without that, people are afraid to speak and they're not able to be comfortable at a common planning meeting. For a common planning meeting to be effective, you need to have a good culture in the building.
We want everybody to have a voice at Common Planning. It's really important that everybody speaks. It's kind of a must-do. It's a good must-do, too, because it makes more people invested. And I think we've gotten to the point where people feel very comfortable speaking and collaborating with one another.
Common planning definitely impacts my instruction here at the Silvia. It's been a growth process for us. Common planning gives us a team focus. We get to decide that focus, so that's been a real plus for us. There's a definite carryover into our practice in the classroom.
So that's why your word was great, schoolmates, right?